The whole history of Paraguay has these big masters, these men who are typical of the country. And I think in spite of that, I think it's the women ultimately who are the internal tissue of society. So it was going to be very important for this film to take place in a world where women are seen as an object, but also to show that women, working with women, based on a story which is about women, which is women in cinema, where the men are more or less secondary. They're marginal in this story. Yes, it's a vision. I don't know if it's just about a social class, but sometimes they get caricatured, right? And we're trying to escape that. We're trying to work a bit with seeing what's happening in society as women who are, if you like, a group, and the group that are with them. There's not much mobility socially, and we're working a great deal around this chisme. I think it's important to say that Paraguay is in some way fairly invisible in cinema terms. This is part of the obscurity that we're trying to deal with here in this film. So this is to remind us that we're living in a society doing the same as it's been doing for the last 50 years. But for me at least, I want to reach the audience in Paraguay because we've been through this really hard coup, as you said. But of course, the history goes back a lot further, and it's a black screen. When we talk about the film, I like to think that it's a film that is looking to the future. It's looking at what could happen if we manage to succeed with this process of change. It's very important for us. There's a lot of discrimination and an absence of rights in Paraguay. The fact that we can be here at the Berlinale is very important for us. It makes it possible that we can open this up. And that's part of the change that we're witnessing in Paraguay. If you think about the debt we have to women in my history, because we have this militarized history where women just didn't exist in the past. And Angie is romantic, she's musical. But working with Ana Brun was great. So from that point of view, I think there's a violence in the silence. There's a visible violence in society, but there's also an invisible violence too, and that's what the film talks about. It's a quest for liberty in every sense, because my life in general has been very similar to that of Chela. And it was very hard for me to achieve my freedom. And in the film, at the end, you get that. I end by breaking that chain that normally all of us have to break for ourselves. We don't even have a basic law on non-discrimination. But what's happening is that we're talking here, I think, we're talking about a situation where it seems to us, obviously, we're talking about a higher social class here. And if you're a member of a higher social class, you're less likely to encounter discrimination than if you're looking for work or at work. But it's also a very conservative society, and there's a lot of repression in every sense. So there's also an internal issue. All the personalities here are members of this lost generation under Stroessner, who had to hide everything, their desire, their sexuality. It was a very repressive regime. This whole idea of gender, we don't have any laws on gender in Paraguay. We don't have any laws protecting people from discrimination. You have to be young, pretty. As soon as you become a mother, you become the property of the man. This is the only system we have in our society. And this film is brave enough to focus on these women who have to live with this violence, this repression, this silence all the time. They try to make us invisible, and we're making them visible.